What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Dylan Talks Tone. Today we are going to talk about 5 things that make your guitar tone suck. And most of these things are things that you can do something about for relatively little money. There's a couple things that aren't, but we're going to give you those ideas. If you'll notice, this is a little different. We are live from the module, so as soon as I'll tell you what these 5, we'll talk about this first. And then for those of you that are interested, I'll tell you why I am live streaming from the module on a Monday when we normally are doing pre-recorded videos on Mondays. So I'll fill you in on all of that. As always, our live streams are ad-free. So if you would like to support us with a super chat or some such thing, you are welcome to do so. Make sure you check out DylanTalksTone.com for all your pickup needs. And check out DylanandLeslie.com for some stuff that we're making too that's kind of off topic. So let's go ahead and get into the 5 things that I think these are things that people overlook. Okay, so normally you'll go into some sort of Facebook group or some sort of something like that, and people will be, hey, I got this new pedal. How can I get this tone? Whatever. Like, things are very adjustment based, and things are very to me, a lot of times it's over specific, but it's sort of like anything else. If you go back to the basics, you could do a lot to improve your guitar tone, and most of this stuff doesn't cost anything. So it's kind of going back to the fundamentals, right? Like, that applies to a lot of things in life, and so that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. Number 1, we're going to talk about tuning. Now, normally you would say, I wouldn't play the guitar out of tune because that's out of tune. Like, I'll sound terrible if I'm out of tune, but it's not just your strings being in tune. A lot of it has to do with, for example, the intonation on the guitar. Sometimes if your intonation is correct, so to real quickly explain without getting too far in the weeds here, intonation is never actually totally perfect on a guitar. You kind of have to set everything to be what you want. What I mean by that is, if you set it perfectly for the cowboy chords, then it might be a little off in the 12th fret and above. So are you a cowboy chord guy, or are you a wheedly diddly guy? Is that how do you enjoy playing guitar? You might have to make some adjustments there to get the tone to be perfect. Why does this have to do with tone? Because a lot of times the intonation on your guitar, on certain parts of the guitar or most of the guitar, it can sound sort of basically in tune. But what can happen is you can have a lot of weird harmonics. You can have a lot of phase cancellation, meaning that you've got notes fighting against each other that will either overall kill sustain on the secondary side, like once it gets into the amp, or your notes will not ring out at all because you've just got everything kind of fighting against each other. And so making sure that your guitar is set up how you want it to play as far as the intonation is concerned, for most of us, that's just making sure that it's properly in tune, properly set up, and then setting the intonation at the 12th fret, right? Like, we've got videos on that. For most of us, that's enough. However, for specific circumstances, playing slide, playing a lot of, again, way high up on the neck or way down low on the neck predominantly, higher action, heavier strings, intonation can be affected, and it can affect your tone because it will affect how you deliver the note. Because really, when we're talking about tone, we're talking about delivering the note that we intend to deliver. So when we pluck the note, we strike the string, we expect the sound to come out. When that sound doesn't come out properly, we're not getting the tones we want. One of those things can be intonation and our tuning. So not just being in tune, but being tuned correctly for the situation. Okay. Second, let's talk about we're going to go backwards here a little bit. We'll talk about pedal mismatch. A lot of times you will buy a pedal. A lot of folks, anyway, a lot of times folks will buy a pedal and it'll be like, this is Pearl Jam tone in a box. This is Marshall tone in a box. This is John Mayer's dad rock in a box. This is whatever in a box. And you'll get that and it won't do what you want it to do. Chances are that you've got it with something else in your signal chain that is fighting against it. Okay? So when you start to look at pedals, don't just look at them, what color they are. The green one's going to be a tube screamer. The blue one's going to be a blues driver, a blues breaker, like that sort of stuff. What we're really concerned about here is what areas of the frequencies are they working with? So, for example, we're going to talk about amps in a minute. So, for example, a tube screamer is very mid-rangey, right? So, are you going to use a mid-rangey pedal with another mid-rangey pedal? Now that's just going to sound like you got your nose plugged, right? Are you going to use that with two scooped out pedals, and then you're going to get completely lost in the mix? When you think about the EQ of each of your tools, how do they work in the sonic space, right? So if you're trying to accentuate lower frequencies with this effects pedal, and you're trying to accentuate higher frequencies with this effects pedal, or mids or whatever, do you have two things that are fighting against each other? Think about that. Try to isolate what each one does and really understand what each pedal does and what it's meant to do. So don't say, I'm going to get a pedal and I'm going to sound like Slash. Well, why? Is it because it's a little bit mid-range heavy? Is it because it's a little chunky on the bottom? Is it because it's very sparkly on the top? Is that going to fit what I'm trying to do? And don't just buy based on the label on the pedal, right? So that can be a big thing. Not exactly the same, but almost most importantly, with this subject, number 3 is going to be amp selection. So when we're talking about our pedals, we have to also be talking about our amp. And we're going to also talk about guitar in a minute. Spoiler alert. But the thing is that our amps do the same thing. Think about amps like, let's see. Think about like a 6505 or a 5150, right? Versus a Fender Princeton. Even a Fender Princeton versus a Fender Bassman. Completely different. Fenders in general versus Marshalls. So, do we want a lot of bottom end? Do we want a scooped mid-range? Do we want a real sparkly top end like an AC30 or anything with like a EL84 tube in it, right? Now, this section is not meant to be tube versus digital versus solid state, whatever, because a lot of times in digital format especially, we can buy a lot of these profiles, or we could have a lot of these profiles without actually having the actual amp. So what are we trying to do with our sound? Are we trying to have a Marshall sound? Does it go with the pedals that we have, and vice versa? If you're going to buy a pedal, does it go with the amp that you have, right? If you have a really mid-heavy amp, do you want to put a tube screamer with it? Probably not, because you're going to sound all nasally again, right? There's very few people that'll put like a very top boosty, sparkly boost pedal with a Vox amplifier, for example. Brian May is an excellent example. So those are kinds of things that you got to think about. Are you matching those things together? A lot of times people will think about individual sounds that they're trying to make, and they'll go buy the thing with the guy's name on it, and they won't get there. How is that guy getting there, right? How is Jerry Cantrell getting there? How is, anybody getting, Slash, whatever, getting to that sound? Think about the sonic space that they live in the rest of their band and what they're trying to do, other than just, I'm going to buy a John Mayer pedal and sound like John Mayer, because that's not exactly how it works. It can get you there, sort of, but you have to understand how it fits into the rest of the puzzle, right? Yeah, super important stuff. And the thing is it'll help you to, unless you're an amp collector or a pedal collector who just wants to buy a bunch of stuff because it's fun. I mean, buy all the pedals if you want to buy all the pedals. But if you have to make specific circumstances, you're in specific circumstances, specific budget, trying to do a specific thing, those are things that you're going to have to think about. The next thing is going to be the wrong guitar. So my story here is, when I grew up, I've told this story many times. When I grew up, my very first guitar was a 1985 Stratocaster. I got it when I was preteen, when I got this guitar, and I still have it. I'll make a video about it at some point. And I actually just bought the amp that I had at the same time. It was a PV Studio Pro 40. For those of you that know, that is a solid state 40 watt combo that kind of sounds terrible, but you can do some fun stuff with it. I was listening to Van Halen a lot at the time, 1984, and trying to figure out why I could not sound like that. I had the wrong guitar. Sometimes you just have the wrong guitar. Sometimes the guitar you have doesn't make the sound you want because it just doesn't make the sound you want. There will be many people that will get in the comments and say, well, a really good guitar player can make any guitar sound however he wants. But we're not all good guitar players. Most of us are just average dudes with guitars, right? And so we need the cheat. We need the pedal. We need the amp. We need the guitar, right? Joe Satriani always sounds like Joe Satriani. Eddie Van Halen always sounds like Eddie Van Halen, whatever he played. But a lot of us don't have that skill level, and a lot of us do need that help. And let's just face it. Sometimes a Strat ain't going to get you humbucker tones no matter what you do. So, not that you should just run out and buy a different guitar because it doesn't get the sound you want. Allow the guitar that you have to be what it is and explore the sounds that it can make with the gear that you have. By no means is this saying you have the wrong amp, you have the wrong pedals, you have the wrong guitar. But allow yourself to find the tone that you can make with what you have first. And explore that, what it's capable of, and learn about those things and do those things ahead of time. Before you just ditch it all and go buy, something running after tone that then you're still chasing because you don't totally understand the pieces that you already own. If you take the time to get the pieces that you already own all lined out, you will be better off. You'll save yourself a lot of money and a lot of frustration in the future. Number 5, guitar setup. This is the number one thing. If your guitar is not set up properly, it will not do what you want it to do. Anytime you have buzzes, rattles, anything that's stealing the energy that you're putting into the string because it's going somewhere else, it's not getting you the tone that you want. Unless you want a rattly piece of crap that sounds like that on purpose. Jack White. Okay. He does a thing. Dan Auerbach. He does a thing with fuzzy, weird, cheap guitars that aren't set up very well. But for the most part, most of us, when we strike the string, we intend it to do a thing. When that energy gets lost and rattles across some frets, rattles across the nut, rattles across the saddles, gets dead in a nut because the nut is wrong, because the intonation is wrong like we talked about. But usually if it's a mechanical thing like that, sometimes there's other things in the setup that can affect it. Fix your setup first. Before you fix anything, fix your setup on your guitar first. Then do all the other stuff we talked about. But I would fix your setup absolutely first. That's what I've got. Let's see. I sound best on my air guitar. Let's see. People are talking about flat wound strings. I sound best when somebody else is playing. Yeah, right on. Let's see. Yeah, man. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. So for those of you that care, and maybe some of you don't, but that's fine. First of all, like, subscribe, do all the things, hit the bell. I want to put all that into the video like a normal video. Okay. Extension to the video. So if you don't care about this, you can click away. If not, that's fine. The reason we're in the van is because Hurricane Helene 100% ravaged the state of Georgia. Absolutely ravaged it. I've lived here for 12 years. And normally when we get a hurricane in Georgia, it is literally like we're 2.5 hours from the coast. So a lot of times we'll get leftover rainstorms. Your your porch furniture might blow to the other side of the deck, whatever, right? Like, we get some severe stuff, 50, 60 mile an hour wind gusts. You got to kind of tie some stuff down, check your yard, that kind of thing. You might blow over some pots or something. It's not a big deal. The eye wall of the storm was still a Cat 1 when it got to Augusta, Georgia. We're in Augusta, Georgia. We had 100 mile an hour sustained winds for about 5 hours. Friday night into Saturday morning. We did not sleep. It felt like the roof was going to blow off the house. And we have a good house. Like, we have a brick house, hipped roof, really built well. It felt like it was going to come apart. I have a humongous Cleveland pear tree in my front yard. It is now in a bunch of shreds in my front yard. I have a 6-foot privacy fence that goes around a half acre. Gone. Not only that, we have no fuel and no electricity for about 20 or 30 miles. So there is we have no power. We've not had power since Friday. So it's 80 something degrees, no air conditioning, whatever. This is not a pity pun. We are totally cool. Totally cool. We have the van. The van has Elon-ernet, so we have internet. The house is fine. We can live in it. It does not have air conditioning, so it's hot during the day. We've been taking the van about an hour and a half away on and off this week to get fuel and supplies and come back. And we're using the van to charge up. I've got a couple of solar chargers. We're doing fine. So everything's fine. It sucks, but everything's fine. There are people around us. I have a friend who lost his house and the tree literally fell on him. He almost died. I got a few friends that don't have cars. I got a few friends that don't have houses. And, of course, it's nothing like North Carolina. In North Carolina, they're really in a world of hurt. My across-the-street neighbor has medical conditions and needs electricity, so they had to take her to the hospital because she couldn't stay home. Like, a lot of people have it a lot worse than us. So we're dealing with it. But they're saying that the power might not be on again until Friday. I don't think it's going to be that long looking around town, but you never know. Georgia Power said that they lost 25% of all of their substations in their entire grid and have to completely rebuild them. Not just like repair stuff, but like 25 substations completely gone. They're having to literally rebuild infrastructure. So it's been crazy. It's go to the gas station. There's like the couple gas stations that work is lines. It's like Mad Max, people getting in fights. It's the whole deal, man. So anyway, I just wanted to update everybody on that. We actually just got a UPS shipment today. So UPS is running. So we just got parts. I don't have electricity, but we are doing things. So if you order stuff, I sent an email out to everybody who has ordered parts from us to give them an update on where their stuff is. Everything is in stock. I have most everything for everybody. Most everything is wound. We are just waiting for power to come back on to solder, assemble, and get out the door. Okay. Once the power comes back on, we'll be right on it. We've wound way ahead of time. We're in a good spot. If you order stuff from us this week, I don't foresee us having a problem shipping middle of next week, and that's pretty normal. Okay, so don't be afraid to order stuff. We're right in there. I feel good about it. Basically, what it really means is we're going to lose about 4 days of work. But one day is Monday, and usually I shoot videos on Monday. So really, we only lost 3 days. We're going to lose about 3 days of work. So it doesn't really put us that far behind. So don't be afraid to order. If you do, I would really appreciate it because it really supports what we got going on. People have asked how they could help us. And I honestly, order pickups and merch. Order pickups and merch. That's the way you could help us more than anything. Because we don't have any way, I can't do anything else other than work for you. So I will keep working for you. So there you go. There it is. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. And we will see you tomorrow for the podcast if I can swing it. I'm sure I'll be able to. We'll see you later.